want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Madmen of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Good afternoon, Madmen Mafia.
Boom. I'm Kirk M. Samuels.
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
We're the goats.
We're the goats.
Masculine radio, masculine communication and media. We are the goats. And so we just roll on with that. I'm looking down at my phone because I hit share. Because if you care, you would share. And you know, and where we about to go, man, it's a good one to hit share.
Yeah, I mean, we had the one last week where we talked about hormone health and Dr. Lee just blowing the roof off the industrial medical complex and everything. So this is another one. And actually for the next month, next 4 shows, we're digging into a topic that needs to be shared, needs to be talked about, needs to be made more commonly discussed.
You know, people consider America to be kind of the top of the heap in terms of we have the most, we get the most, we do the most, we're the most extra, we're the wealthiest, richest country in the planet, we this and that, people outside the country, a lot of people outside the country get the impression that America is just, kind of the top of the heap in terms of everything.
Well,
but at the same, I mean, it kind of is in a lot of ways, and I'm not dogging America, obviously. I love my country, I serve my country, as we both did. But at the same time, it ain't all rainbows and unicorns. Mm-hmm. It ain't all sunshine. We got a lot of struggles in our country. And one of them is addiction.
Yeah, for the wealthiest, I mean, something about the West. I mean, when you have the most, I think sometimes you struggle the most. And we don't have necessarily a lot of focus on health and mental health and all those things. So there's a lot of coping because, I mean, one of the reasons we do this show is because there's so many men out there, taking themselves out because there's not a community focused on mental health and physical health and how to deal with their issues without using substances. And so we may be the top of the heap, but we're also, in so many other ways as the richest country and most opportunities and everything else. However, we're also top in the world in addiction.
Yeah, I'm looking at a statistic here of people 12 and older, 2020, according to 2023 United States National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Of Americans 12 and older, there are 45.5 million Americans reported anyway who are addicted to something. 16.7% of our population is addicted to something. We happen to be number 1 in the world in terms of addiction.
Yeah, I think the appropriate word there is reported.
Yeah.
These are people who have actually been through, they've been arrested, they've been through recovery, they've done something so that their name's in the system. But I mean, I will use myself as an example. There's a lot of us out there that are high functioning addicts, alcoholics, whatnot, that most people would never know. And because it is so commonplace and it is so prescribed, even advertised and marketed that things like alcohol, that's fine. No, that's a social thing. You're not addicted. And then you get to a point where you need that to get to sleep. That becomes part of your daily routine. And then you're like, well, I really want to stop. Well, you really get to a point where like, I don't know if I can stop. But then what if I can't sleep? And then I can't go to work and then I can't function. And it turns into this whole thing where there becomes that tipping point where you're like, okay, I need to make a change. I need to stop. How do I do that? Well, luckily for us, there are a lot of guys out there who have been through that before us. A lot of guys who have taken those steps and gone down that road that can guide us and mentor us and be coaches along the lines of recovery. But as with everything else, you got to look in that mirror first and go, okay, here's an issue I want to change. Here's something I want to change in my life because it's no longer serving me. And that's the whole thing. Everything can be a crutch. It can be a benefit to you initially. But then if it becomes something you're dependent upon, then it becomes an addiction, then it becomes negative. And you have to make that change.
National Institute on Drug Abuse says drug abuse costs the U.S. more than $740 billion annually in healthcare, wasted productivity, and crime. Wow. Along with all of our wealth comes consumerism, consumption. One of the ways that we measure how well we're doing as an economy is our consumer index. How well are we consuming stuff? And consumption is is the foundation of addiction. I mean, addiction is uncontrolled consumption of something. And so, when we live in a society, a culture where it is about consumption, the temporary, how can I, whatever it is, whatever it is I can consume. And there's any number of things that you can be addicted to. But at the core of that, when something becomes, when something, like to your point, when something becomes a dependency to the point of not being able to control it, man, I think, that can be the foundation of a lot of our culture, a lot of our society. And I think a lot of it comes down to consumption. A lot of it comes down to our economy. You can't drive down the street without, every mile, 15 to 20 different options to consume something, period. We're not really building much. We're not really producing much. We are creating things that are temporary, that are used for consumption.
Yeah. I think even to that point, nowadays, we don't have to drive anywhere.
No,
it comes to you. It's in your phone.
Yeah.
It's in your pocket. You can't even get away from it without actually a conscious decision to detox and to get away from it. And we've talked a lot about getting out in nature and taking breaks and recharging. You cannot do that with a phone in your pocket because you're still leashed. I mean, we're probably the most controlled and leashed country in the world because of our phones. I mean, we all need a dopamine detox. I think it's something we don't realize how. I mean, you look at even when Steve Jobs created the iPhone, he wouldn't allow his kids to get one.
Yeah.
When he created the iPad and the MacBook and the laptop, he wouldn't allow his kids to use that technology because he knew how addicting they were. He knew how detrimental they could be. But because we live in a consumerist society and it's all about the big dollar and marketing and big business and making more money, well, we just become a commodity.
Most of the people that run all these tech companies don't let their kids have cell phones, don't let their kids have the technology that they are creating, that they are producing, because they know the foundation, the bedrock of all that kind of stuff. They know how easily we are manipulated by algorithms, how easily we are, controlled and how we get dependent upon that next thing, that next click, that next like, that next view, that next whatever. And so a lot of those people, they keep that stuff out of their family.
Yeah, especially on a year like this where we're going into an election year and everything. Man. You want to talk about manipulation and being controlled. I mean, there's so many people who are hating their neighbor and their brother and their family member because they like somebody different than they like. And because of all this manipulation and these echo chambers of algorithms on social media and even on the mainstream media, if you get on one channel versus the other channel, there's a focused opinion. They're pushing an agenda, and so you either have to completely unplug, make up your own mind, or you have to watch everything to try to sift through all the different opinions and biases and lobbyists and all these different agendas that they're pushing. And so for us, it's not even just about chemical addiction. I mean, it's not even just about drugs and alcohol. I mean, it's cell phones, pornography. It's about these dopamine hits and these things that we are being commoditized and used as cattle, basically, to fund big business, to fund big pharma, to fund all these government policies and institutions. And they don't care about us. They care about our attention, our eyeballs, and our basically getting the clicks, getting us to put our attention and focus, because wherever your attention and focus goes, your energy goes. And that's your energy can be just your attention. It can be your money. It can be, your time, everything.
We are going to get, over these next few weeks, we're going to get some different perspectives. And, I would hope that we would just kind of hear different people's take on that whole thing. We got some folks lined up that are going to come in and kind of give us their take. And, but all at the core of it, all addiction is a substance abuse. I mean, that substance could be a neurotransmitter or is a neurotransmitter, dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin, you name it, whatever that is. And so at the core of it, that click or that like, man, that stimulates that dopamine is the neurotransmitter of the next. Like, I need another hit, I need another fix, I need the next time. And standing alone is not a bad thing, but when it's manipulated, and we don't even realize subconsciously how we can be manipulated in our culture. But but we do live in an addiction culture. We live in a consumer culture, and thereby we live in an addiction culture because a lot of these things, there are no breaks, there are no stops. And unfortunately, at the very end of that ugly yellow brick road is some bad things, man. It's some loss. Some of us have lost some very close people to us because of addiction. So yeah, I mean, when you live in this kind of culture, man, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to deal with. And it's something that we should talk about because everybody is impacted, everybody is affected, everybody knows somebody struggling with some kind of addiction. And if you don't know anybody else, it's probably you. You're probably the one, and you probably know it too. So we got to be able to talk about these things. And yeah, from a guy perspective, man, when we don't talk about these things, man, it's like a mushroom or a fungus, man, or a bacteria. It just grows in the darkness. It thrives on the darkness. And when we don't begin to talk about this stuff and shed light about this stuff, then it just proliferates, just beneath the surface where everything looks great. You can have a great car, but you got a busted radiator hose and you got coolant all over the floor of your garage.
We'll tell that story later.
Yeah,
but no, that's something that I think I just need to put a caveat out there. If you are in the United States and you're not Amish, there's probably about a 95% chance you're addicted to something. Probably. Whether it's caffeine, cell phones, alcohol, drugs, whatever, and food. I mean, and drugs is such a broad topic or such a broad subject because drugs can be caffeine. It can be alcohol. It can be actual, sugar and barbiturates and all those different things. So when people say drugs, I don't do drugs. Well, are you taking, lithium or Valium or what is your doctor prescribing you? Those can also become addictive. I mean, the opiate dilemma that we've had in the States for 20 years now, 30 years, 50 years. I mean, these things have been prescribed and people are getting hooked on them to their detriment. I mean, they were prescribed for something to be beneficial after surgery, after an injury, something like that. Then they get hooked on them and now they can't survive without them. So let's just put it out there. This is not a hiding thing. This is not a cloak thing. This is not something that, we should even be embarrassed about because let's face it, America, we're an addicted country, addicted to shopping and everything else.
So we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into that, setting up our next few weeks here today. And we're going to be open, we're going to be honest, and we're going to shed some light, pull back the covers on just the topic, and just hopefully maybe even normalizing just the topic. And maybe somebody will be prompted to kind of, share this with somebody else or have the conversation with that other person. But yeah, we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this topic here, like I said, not only today, but over the next few weeks. So we'll take a pause for the calls and we'll be right back here on Mad Men Radio, 1220 AM KLDC. Well,
did you go early?
No, well, I'm looking at the timer right now.
Yeah. You didn't add the 30 seconds for the intro.
Oh,
that's all right.
12 and a half.
We went to public school. We counting good.
We stretched Tanner last week.
That's true. Yeah, we need to be nice to Tanner.
14, 15 every time last week.
Tanner's like, y'all been here an hour and a half. Get out.
Give him some cushion. Yeah, something like that.
Or within 10 seconds. I mean, that's very good. Pre-workout. Ready? And we're back.
Yeah.
It is a Mad Men show.
Yeah.
We are right here on KLDC.
Yeah. And we are on the interwebs.
Everywhere.
Facebook, YouTube, man. We probably
TikTok,
on
Instagram.
We probably,
we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, pretty much if you have some technology you're addicted to and you like to watch and listen to people, man, like and subscribe.
We ain't hard to find.
No.
If I can quote Coach Prime and see you, we ain't hard to find.
We right here.
But so we're talking about addiction, man, and I came across this definition. What is addiction? I came across this definition of addiction by a guy. I came across him online on YouTube. I think he's Canadian, and he's a psychologist and an MD. But Dr. Gabor Mate is his name, and it was a 4-part definition. It was a craving for something. Satisfying that craving with something that provides only temporary relief of that craving. the inability to stop seeking relief of that craving. And then the last part is negative consequences associated with finding relief of that craving. And I use the analogy that I love animal crackers and Nutella a lot. Like a lot. I mean, like for real. I also love Uncrustables these days a lot. Like I really like Uncrustables, dude. I get that box at Costco. Don't play with my Uncrustables, man. I mean, and then our buddy Ben, who's gonna be on here, introduced me to putting Uncrustables in the air fryer.
Oh yeah.
Lord have mercy. Woo, boy, I'm telling you, if you want to change your paradigm on life, if you want to question everything you knew beforehand, put a thawed out Uncrustable in the air fryer for like 3 minutes. Oh man, it's so daggone good, man. I love the pepper. Anyhow, see, I'm about to have a little.
Yeah, you're having a moment right now. Some flashbacks.
I'm gonna need a moment of silence or something. I love those things, and let's use that. For example, let's use my Uncrustables in the air fryer, for example. I crave that. I'm craving it right now. Right when I crave it, and I go downstairs and I pull out. I never eat one.
You can't just eat one.
You can't eat one Uncrustable,
like chips.
dude. That's wrong. So when I go downstairs and I pull a couple of Uncrustables out of the freezer and I put them on the counter, because they don't take long to thaw out. Now, Uncrustables, they thaw out in like 5-10 minutes, right? When I put it on the counter, and then when I put it in the air fryer when I eat it, I've satisfied that craving, but it's only temporary because it's not the last time I'm ever going to crave that thing. So, at some point in the future, I'm going to have that craving again, and I'm going to go back and do it all over again. Now, okay, so I'm with you. Part 1, part 2, now part 3. I have to kind of, for me, there's a fine line between that and the inability to stop. Like, I haven't had a Uncrustable in the air fryer for like 15 minutes. No, I'm kidding. For
15 minutes.
It's been like several days. But I wouldn't say it's gotten to the point where I can't stop eating Uncrustables in the air fryer. Like I said, I do several times a week, but it's not to the point where I can't stop. And there's definitely no negative consequences in my life. I'm not diabetic. I'm not overweight. I'm not going to lose my marriage because of Uncrustables, unless she touched my Uncrustables. Then we might have a problem.
Then it's a marriage counseling. We
might have a problem. Then she better take some.
Better get your hands on my Uncrustable.
Better bone up on that hormone therapy, and it's going to handle some. But anyhow, so there's no negative consequences associated with me eating my Uncrustables in an air fryer. But there have been things in my life. There have been times in my life where I crave watching people have sex on a screen. And I've craved and I sought temporary relief for that by consuming that. And then I was to the point where I couldn't stop consuming that. And because I couldn't stop consuming what I had craving for, I had negative consequences in my life. I'd been divorced twice for the same thing. At my lowest point, I was living in the back of my car, and at the very lowest point, I thought my life wasn't worth living just because of that, not because life was terrible. I was employed. I had a nice house in the suburbs on a cul-de-sac, married with 2 kids and a pet, all that kind of stuff. I had that life, but I didn't think my life was worth living because I had this 30-year addiction. And so I understand how something can satisfy part of that, but when you get to all 4 parts of that definition of his, to me, that's like, okay, that totally makes sense. And so in terms of what is addiction, because that's a big thing that people say, well, am I addicted to alcohol? Well, can you stop for X period of time? Is it causing does it have negative impacts? So for me, that definition kind of sticks.
Yeah, I think what really comes down to and what it kind of solidifies it for me when I'm like, am I an addict? Am I not? When you go unconscious, like you can consciously say to yourself, I'm not doing that today. And then on your way home, you just like, you're not even like there. You're not even in your body. It's like something else takes over and drives your body and says, oh, we're going to go get a 12-pack. We're going to go sit on the patio and we're going to, crack that open. That might be an indication because that's where you can't stop because now your body is addicted to that chemical and it needs it. So then it's like, okay, well, even though I'm consciously saying no, if I'm not being completely present in the moment and saying no every second, like, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not doing that. And you just allow yourself to go on autopilot. That's a good indication. which for a lot of us, I mean, even with the Uncrustables, like example, a lot of us don't realize how addicted we are to certain things, sugar and fats and fast food and things like that, because we'll go unconscious, like, oh, it's just McDonald's. Oh, it's just Starbucks. Oh, it's just this or that thing. And not realizing how much we've become attached to that, become addicted to that, whether it's caffeine, sugar, fat, alcohol, whatever it is. And so it comes down to a point where you really have to take stock and go, okay, if I want my life to be better, if I want my life to be, I want to be able to express who I truly am, I need to remove these things that I'm using, or I started to use as a drug. I started to use as something to soothe whatever pain I was going through. And we have to learn how to acknowledge the pain, let it flow through us. Because so many of us are, especially as guys today, we're just a raw nerve using whatever we can get our hands on, whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, food, shopping, whatever, to just soothe that pain and to just numb it just enough so that we can survive. So many of us are in survival mode. And I think what's really coming to me, I think is one of the things that's really starting to bring this to the surface for myself personally, is that all of those things take me away from who I am. And all these marketing and business and the cell phone always constantly binging, each one of those dopamine hits takes me away from who I am. It actually distracts me somewhere, distracts me away from myself. And I think one of the biggest issues why we are so highly, top of the pyramid for addiction in the West is that the fact that we have been trained away from ourselves. Most kids up until about the age of 5 or 6 are genius level as far as creativity and how their imagination works and how they come up with things. Then after about 2-3 years in school, now that's been trained out of them. Now we're being trained to be factory workers and be just like everybody else. And then we're trained to be crabs in the bucket. Don't be different. Don't be yourself. Be who we want you to be. So we're comfortable around you so we can understand who you are. And I think that's a core dilemma and a core source of the addiction issue in the States, because we've been trained out of the freedom to be ourselves. And most of us, especially as guys, need to get back to who we really are, because even all these success coaches, and they're all like, you need to be a high ticket coach, you make millions of dollars. Maybe that's not who you are. Maybe you can be the farmer coach, you can be the coach out in the country, you can be the shaman out in the woods, whatever. You don't need all this material stuff and be a consumer all your life. Maybe you get to decide who you really are and how that you play out your specific unique you-ness out in the world. Because I think that's what's causing all these issues, is that we've gotten away from each of us fulfilling our unique role as who we really are, because we've been trained out of that. Don't be unique, don't be who you are, be like the rest of us, so we can put you in a box and feel safe about who we think you are.
Along with that uniqueness is being enough.
Mm-hmm.
When life is not enough, when you don't feel like you're enough, when you feel like you're lacking something, you're missing something, all those things play into, I need more, or there should be more, or whatever. And then you can easily get into the habit of medicating. And you got to ask yourself, okay, where there's medication, there's pain. So where's my pain? But a lot of that pain is, and especially in the land of plenty, in the land of milk and honey, is real easy to look around and say, man, how come I don't have what they have? How come I don't have the body they have? How come I don't have the money, the car? How come I don't have the life? How come I don't have the wife? How come I don't have the husband? How come I don't have the job, et cetera, et cetera? Why am I not as successful? Blah, 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 all this other kind of stuff. And when you lose sight of the fact that enough is enough and silence is okay, when you lose sight of the fact that being content is enough and it's okay, like you don't have to be at the top of anything. It's okay to have your lane of the highway. It's okay to be you and to have you be enough, such that you're not looking for more or medicating what you don't have. That's one of the things that live just beneath the surface of addiction. Like, man, I can't just sit still. Like, I can't just be bored. I can't just be quiet. I can't just be still. I can't just be. In our English, the other form of to be is I am. I can't just be I am. I am enough. And when we can settle into that, man, that takes us a very long way into being able to deal with the quietness, sometimes the silence that is sobriety.
Yeah, that is where this conversation needs to be had more often, because when we don't look at our addictions, we don't look at what we're soothing, we don't look at the pain that we're covering up, we won't realize that really what's happening is we're being manipulated away from our true selves and who we really are, which would make us feel enough. So many of us are, comparison is a thief of joy, is a thief of happiness. And when all we're being told to do is compare ourselves to this guy or to that girl or to this family or to this millionaire, you can compare yourself to death forever. But when you're in that comparison, you're not acknowledging your own strengths, your own gifts, who you really are. And I tell you, when you're not acknowledging yourself, it's going to cause pain. It's going to cause trauma that needs to be soothed and medicated.
Yeah, just being able to be content is a gift. The present is called the present because it is a gift. And just being able to be still, to be in the moment, to be enough, to be content, it puts you in a mental and even a spiritual state where you don't have to escape. You're not getting away from anything, which again, experientially, I can tell you, is also kind of in the recipe of addiction. It's the escape of where I am right now. And if you're looking to escape, then by nature, you're not satisfied or content with where you are. So all of this kind of goes into the philosophy or the underneath the hood of what addiction is, and probably why in our country, we are the most addicted country in the world. We're also the most incarcerated country in the world. Per capita, most people in prison. But I would submit to you that just because you're not in prison doesn't mean you're not incarcerated. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people in prison that are more free than people walking around in these streets. Yeah. And so we got to get to the point where we're content. We got to get to the point where we're enough. And we got to get to the point where we're not looking to escape anything. Although we're not looking to escape, we have to get away.
Let's be free for a minute and take this break.
Yeah, Tanner's going to hit us up with some stuff here in a break, man. We'll be right back. Mad Men of Masculinity, 1220 AM KLDC. Tanner's going to do his thing in there.
What you got, Tanner? You're supposed to be our production assistant here. You're supposed to be the producer. You're supposed to have all the info.
He got all the info.
He got all the info. You hear that, ladies? He got all the info.
You gonna chop it up? You don't know, dude. I'm telling you, man. I mean, yeah, lonely place, man. Uh-huh. Lonely place, man. Addiction freaking sucks, man. It is.
Well, I mean, that's something we got to dig into too. Is that all of this, all the businesses are trying to make us addicts.
Yeah.
I mean, MSG and Chinese food, they don't put that in there because it tastes good. They put that in there because 20 minutes later you're hungry again.
You want some more.
You want some more.
Brings you back.
So it's the same thing going on throughout everything. And so it's like peeling back those layers of, well, yeah, what else is distracting me? What else is in the way of me finding me? So, yeah, let's talk about that.
We are back.
We are back.
Mad Men of Masculinity.
Right here on KLDC.
Yeah, 1220 AM.
In the Mile High City.
And we are on the interwebs.
Everywhere.
All over the place.
How was Journey the other night, man?
Yo, I went to a Journey concert. So my wife digs Journey,
Coors Field, right? That was pretty cool.
It was at Coors Field. My wife digs Journey. I ain't judging her.
Journey's bomb, man.
And
how you like the new singer?
It was cool, man. That new singer, man, he looked like he was 30-some years old. I looked up, he's like 56 or something like that.
I'm talking about black don't crack. Filipinos don't age for nothing.
That dude, man, he was a good. But yeah, man, a bunch of old dudes, man, they was getting it, man. They was getting it in. And I kind of enjoyed it. Although in a stadium full of 40 or 50,000 people, there was me and one other black dude in the whole stadium. And he had a white wife too. And I looked at him and I walked up to him. I gave him a hug. I said, "Man, I thought I was the only one." He said, "Nah, me too."
So, you and me and the rest of them.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. It keeps it real in this.
There had to be more folks there. They were just
dude. I looked around. I walked around.
It's a stadium, man. There's thousands of people,
and they all look exactly the same. Trust me, man. It was like that Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things is not the same.
Well, I'm proud of you. You're brave.
But dude, we had a great time, man. And I enjoy music. Period. I didn't realize that. I knew that I'd heard so many of their songs. I didn't realize that. Oh,
Trust me.
chime in.
All right, Kat. If you said there are only two, then there's only two.
But yeah, I mean, they did. It was good, man. We had great season. It was a great time, great weather, all that kind of stuff, man. It was a good time.
See, that's one of those things I think is, I don't want to say it's good to be addicted to. I don't think it's good to be addicted to anything necessarily, but when it's music, when it's, being out, when it's something fun and loving and opens your heart and gets you connected with your significant other, I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that's something to look at and to prioritize, but it's all the other things I think that gets in the way of that.
Yeah. You got to make, you got to make connections, man. You got to connect the dots with a lot of things, man. And when you are connected, I don't even know where I heard this from, but somebody said the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember whoever, so I'd credit whoever that was if I knew, but I don't remember who that was.
I'm trying to think. I could see that in my head. I can't remember who that was either.
Because man, addiction is lonely, man. It is lonely and it's isolated. You could be in a stadium full of people and be alone, and it is a lonely place to be, man. And you really got to do some self-evaluation to really figure out what it is that you're getting from that thing. In my addiction, I was getting, and I broke this down at the summit, a few weeks ago. I was getting dopamine, I was getting endorphins, I was getting a testosterone boost, I was getting oxytocin. And, for me, that dopamine was because my life was boring. I mean, and to understand that my life doesn't have to be boring when I put some purpose in that space. Purpose can fill that boring space. That endorphin, my life was just blah. Like I didn't have any excitement. I didn't have anything I was looking forward to. When I put some things into my life that I was looking forward to, that kind of filled that space. I mean, the testosterone boost, again, we just had this whole conversation. Go back and look at the conversation last week about men in our culture, and especially our Western culture, but these days, and testosterone levels, et cetera, et cetera. Oxytocin, the opposite of oxytocin in terms of, the kind of the chemical antidote is cortisol. So my life was stressed out and I was getting oxytocin, which relieved me from the cortisol effects. I was getting a lot of things from my addiction that it happened to be a one-stop shop and it happened to work really, really well. If you're addicted to cigarettes, there are things that are in cigarettes that trigger certain neurotransmitters in your brain. If you're addicted to alcohol, same thing. If you're addicted to food, same thing. Sugar, same thing. Sugar is a stimulant. Caffeine is a stimulant. Cocaine is a stimulant. Mm-hmm. Meth is a stimulant. I mean, and so, under the hood of all of these things, man, is a lot of dots that we can begin to connect in terms of the addiction. And then when you begin to connect those dots, then you can say, okay, maybe I can turn this into a road to recovery.
Yeah, I think it all gets back to peeling back the layers of who you are, getting away those distractions. I mean, you talked about once you get to a quiet place, like getting out into nature. I mean, I love that book, The 3-Day Effect. If you can schedule yourself, like if you're struggling, schedule yourself, like take 3 days off, go out in nature, no phones, no computers, no, electronics at all, and just sit there. It's one of the most powerful things I've done in some of my personal development journey was a 48-hour solo out in the woods. And they do it kind of hardcore because it's not like I could get up and walk around. They give you a 10 by 10 square and a tent, and like, that's your spot. And so you were just there by yourself, and you could hear some of those guys who couldn't be still, who couldn't not be busy, who had to always be doing something, freaking out because they've never been stuck in a 10 by 10 square, which I mean is a good example of how would you feel if you were incarcerated, because a 6 by 6 box or whatever it is. But after that time, I was actually upset because they came to get us early, and I was like, went through the whole struggle, I went through the whole kind of manicness, and found this peace. And what was really interesting to me in that time was that all of these goals and all of these projects and all these things I thought I wanted fell away. And then I was actually kind of mad. I'm like, well, now what? Like, I wanted to do all these things. And now after 2 days out in the woods in nature, getting connected to myself, I don't really want those things, because those things I thought were going to bring me some sort of happiness. I thought that goal was going to create something within myself, which when I unpacked all that, when you get away from all those distractions, all the dopamine hits, all the cell phones, the electronics, all the things that we are inundated with 24/7, get away from Wi-Fi signals and all these other stuff, and just get out into nature and get back into synchronicity with the human residents and the heartbeat of the earth, a lot of those things start to fall away, and you realize I don't need those things because those things are just trying to give me the feeling that I have now, being present and being myself. And so often, because we are trained out of being our unique selves, that's why we need so much medication. That's why we need so much distraction. And because we are trained out of being ourselves, I think the path back to who you really are is the path of recovery. It's taking away those layers, taking away the noise, taking away all the soothing and medicating to get back to who you are. And for a lot of us guys, that means getting back to that wounded little boy inside of us who we have to reparent. It's not our parents' job anymore. We're adults now. We have to become the parent and reparent, remother, refather that little boy inside of us as men. And when we do that, we will, a lot of times, to even Kirk's point, find your purpose. You'll find that thing that will take the place of what you're using to soothe and what you're addicted to. When you find something that comes from your heart and your soul, which usually comes from that wounded little boy inside you that wants to speak out, wants to be seen, wants to be heard. And we're speaking from our own experience. And that's why we're bringing these guys in for the rest of the month to talk about their experience, because nobody wants to hear from somebody who read a book.
Yeah.
They want to hear from your felt experience.
That's a great point in terms of us as men. A lot of the things that hold us down. First of all, you'll never be great. You'll never be great. You'll never be great and an addict. You just won't. I'm not saying that addicted people can't do good things and can't perform at high levels. There are people who are top tier athletes who are gambling addicts, so on and so forth. I'm not saying you can't function. I'm just saying I'm talking about the greatness that's inside of you, the greatest form of you that could be, the highest evolution of you cannot exist hand in hand with the addict in you, because there is a backside of that addiction, and that is shame and guilt that hangs over your head. That is something that controls you. You can't be great if you can't be completely free. And if you're not completely free, then you'll always be held back by something. And so having something that is the brick holding down your balloon will always keep you from the altitude or the heights that you could achieve without that brick holding that thing down.
Yeah, it's just a journey of self-discovery that I think most of us really don't want to go on. But to Kurt's point, your greatness comes from inside you. It comes from removing all those layers and all the things that we're using to survive and getting back into thriving, which cannot happen when we're buried under this pile of trauma and survival and medication and soothing, which, to be honest, is what is marketed to us out in the media, is what is marketed to us out by big business, because they want us to be addicted to their product. They want us to be so hopelessly addicted to their product that their profits keep rising. But that does none of us any good. Doesn't do me any good, doesn't do Kirk any good, doesn't do anybody else any good that's hearing this, to be addicted to their products. And I think as we kind of get through this great awakening time and we start realizing the writing on the wall and how much they said slavery ended in was the 13th Amendment and stuff. No, they just shifted. Now we're all wage slaves. Now it's just, okay, you can do now you get to choose your slavery, but you're still slavery. You're still in slavery because you're a wage slave. Like, can you actually just stop and survive and do whatever you want without working this job you hate? No, not in our world. And it makes sense why maybe we're the most addicted in the country, because we are starting to feel at a core level that we are slaves, and we want to break free from that. But the only way to break free from that is to find some sort of recovery and get back to your core self and start shining that light and speaking that out into the world. But there's probably nothing more frightening for most of us than to actually be our true authentic selves.
Dude, our country cannot be the highest evolution of it until men are great. Until men are at our highest evolution of who we can be, our country will have a glass ceiling as to how good we can be. You want dysfunction in our country? Ramp up the dysfunction in our masculinity. If you want, absenteeism in our country, ramp up the absenteeism in masculinity. Get us consuming, get us addicted, and then you have us distracted, and then the big entities can come into our households, can come into our communities, can come into our schools, can come into our workplaces, our churches, wherever we are, and take whatever because the man is sleeping or distracted or addicted to something. But our country, you think about, man, a generation or two ago, man, when they call it the greatest generation, that's because they were like men. There were men, good men, doing a lot of things. Do you think at this point our country is ready for a Normandy invasion? No. Come on. We aren't there, and I think it's because, to some degree, big whatever has come in and distracted us as men and gotten us a lot of bit off track, thereby, getting the household, the family, the community, the society off track. And so it's important for us as men to realize that when we are chained, our country is chained, our families are chained, our kids suffer when we're chained, when we're distracted, when we're not dialed in, when we're not performing at the highest level that we can perform at. And addiction is that thing in our culture that keeps us from that.
Well, it comes right back to the whole divide and conquer narrative, which, it used to be just between nations and races. Now it's between the sexes. Well, they're starting to do it with families too. I saw a guy talking about, why do you think there's been such this push for independence in families? Why do you think they're like, oh, the kids need to get out of the house as soon as they're 18, instead of having that communal, like, family living together, or the family compound, or the family farm, where we're taking care of each other, where we're creating our own village, our own community, where we're actually around the people who care about us the most. And then, it comes back to taxation and making money off of us, because it's much easier and much more profitable when every one of us has our own rent and our own food bills and our own utilities and our own insurance that we have to pay for, instead of combining those bills as a family, as a community. I see some of the immigrants coming here, and they do, they own a gas station or something like that, but they all live in the same house, and they all combine their bills and stuff. And so that's something we as Americans probably need to start looking at too, is getting back into community and creating community. And I think a lot of that will start with having honest conversations about addiction. I totally
agree with that whole thing, man. We got to get back to a lot of those things, man. And freedom is this country is founded on freedom. Most of us are not free.
Well, speaking of freedom, we better be free for a minute.
Let's be free for a break.
Let's do that. Taking a break right here on the KLDC. We'll be right back.
Boom. Dude, I told you, man, at that concert, there was only two of us.
And, I know you exaggerate, but I'll trust Kat.
Trust her. She's that right there, man. Trust her.
She's like, trust him.
Dude. Man, we were sitting behind, this is sidebar story. We were sitting behind these older ladies. I'm going to guess that they were all in their 50s. And
you're in your 50s.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't say there's nothing wrong with them.
I know, but you said older, like you're not that age.
Well, let me finish the story. You're going to see what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying when I say what I'm saying.
You see what you're saying when you say what you're saying.
These three ladies, right, in their 50s, older in relationship to these two young guys that came and sat next to them. Ooh. These two young guys were 21 years old. We know that because we heard the ladies ask them how old they were. And these ladies, man, they was salivating. It was almost creepy, man. And it was like, oh man, the ladies like moved down close to them, and they were just eyeballing them, and oh man, it was downright creepy. And then we was thinking, they kind of get a pass in our culture, because what if that was three 50-something-year-old men and two 21-year-old females, doing the same thing? And it's like, man, it was just creepy, man. It was like
cougars on the hunt. It's like a safari video.
These weren't cougars. What's the next level of cougar?
I don't know.
No. I'm talking about in age.
Saber-tooth tigers.
Is it what's Puma or
maybe Jaguar
or saber-tooth tiger? Saber-tooth tiger.
Man, that's one of those things we need to. If both parties are of age and but it could be creepy, but as long as they're both getting whatever they want out of it.
But what was creepy was that the guys weren't like reciprocating. Like it
Right.
wasn't, they weren't interested. But
See,
these
now that's
ladies,
creepy.
man, they was just all looking them up. I mean, it was like, oh man, come on, man.
See,
Like
see,
you playing yourself, man. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
nowadays, if you hear a teacher arrested for,
It's not always a dude.
most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's a female, man.
Yeah. Well, see, and there we go right back to taking dad out of the home, and then everybody going crazy,
I'm
and then
telling you, man.
not having a community.
Then it all falls apart.
All falls apart.
It's like the one Jenga piece at the bottom.
Mhm.
Pluck that one out. Next thing you know,
Foundation.
topple.
Boom, boom.
Topple.
There
But
you
it was downright creepy, dude. It was like,
I mean, it's always creepy when like somebody's like, if they're not reciprocating,
that's what I'm saying.
like if they're
Yeah.
just like hunting them.
Yeah.
And I can just imagine it's like, you know, lions in the jungle or
Yeah.
in the Serengeti, just like stalking them.
Dude,
I'm gonna take them down.
you remember that cartoon where they look over, they're hungry and they look over at each other and they turn into a sandwich?
Oh,
Or they turn into a hot dog or something
Ren
like
and
that.
Snippy? Yeah.
I mean, it was that kind of thing, man. It was like, oh man, come on, ladies, like y'all just. I mean, man, and then like the two guys like left at one point for a while and then came back.
They're probably like, we need to get away from these.
I mean, man, it was downright Creepville, man. I mean, I
was that one of those times you almost felt like you had to run interference? Like, dude, y'all need to run.
man,
I'll distract them. Y'all run.
Man, I'm old enough at this point. I'm out of my business.
No, you were just like elbowing cat. Like, watch this.
I got my own
Watch
wife.
this.
to
See
deal
this
with,
going
man.
on? Watch this.
I got my own wife to worry about, man. I ain't worried about these. And they were. I'm pretty sure none of them had rings on, so I'm pretty sure they were all single. But you could tell they was, conspiring. You could tell they was all, and man, it was just creepy. It was just weird. It was just really weird. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely generational differences. I know, like, going to the racetrack and there's teenagers up to 60 somethings,
Yeah.
all playing, and then you're trying to have a conversation, and if it gets off of racing, what?
Yeah.
Like, there's some young guys that was at my old job where they'd be talking. I'm like, what language are you speaking? They're talking about like digital Dungeons and Dragons or something. I'm like, I'll be over here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
growing up now. You're becoming a man.
Oh.
That's when I knew I got old. The first time I was like, that's not music. That's just noise. Oh, I'm old now.
And these two young dudes, they was just digging the concert, man.
Mhm.
They you could tell they were just having a good time, man. They just like that music.
It's like the single girl at the bar. Can't I just have a drink without y'all coming to see if I'm okay?
I guarantee.
that worked once.
I guarantee the reason they left that big gap of time was it was just creepy, dude. I mean, it was like
They were feeling the creeps.
it was just like, dude. I mean, like I said, man, these ladies had to be in their mid-50s, and these two guys literally said they were 21 years old.
All right, we better bring it back. That was a long sidebar, though. This is why you want to go behind the scenes. That's why you want to watch this on YouTube.
Yeah, you gotta check out the behind the scenes action.
Because you won't get this on the radio.
Nope.
We are back.
We're back.
You missed the sidebar. You
Oh,
need to get
yeah.
on YouTube.
You gotta go to YouTube.
He's telling
Facebook.
stories about
Telling concert
Cougars
stories,
or saber-tooth
man.
tigers. What were they
I
at the
think
concert?
they were saber-tooth tigers.
Saber-tooth tigers at the concert.
Prehistoric. The prehistoric ones, man. Yeah,
It was hunting.
Oh, dude,
hunting
they was
some
on,
young
they
meat.
was on the prowl, man. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it was downright creepy. I mean, and that's the thing. They weren't even. It wasn't even like it wasn't even like they were attracted to masculine. Like these 21-year-old. Anyhow,
Anyway,
go back and look at
Yeah.
look at the conversation we just had, and let us know what you think.
we don't get that far off
Put it in the
topic.
comments.
But talk about it, that
Yeah,
could be addiction too. Like,
Hey, man,
addicted
you
to
know.
youth, and that's actually a huge topic.
Yeah.
Look, we had the whole transitions episode a few times ago. We, as Americans, as men, as women, we've got to stop being so addicted to youth. Because, I mean, yeah, it's nice to be young and have energy, but youth comes without wisdom. It comes without knowledge. And most of us, once you get to a certain age, I don't want to go back to being a teenager or 20-something. Yeah, I had more energy and I didn't break every time I fell, but there was really nothing I was contributing. I had nothing to contribute. And we need to acknowledge and accept that getting older is actually a good thing. You want to be the elders. You want to be the wise ones. You want to be the leaders. But if we're all focused on putting needles in our face and stuff like that, then we're just playing along. We're being manipulated by big business, big pharma to make, to have us addicted to youth when we should acknowledge and accept and even celebrate that we're getting older and becoming the elders.
So I'm looking forward to, man, these next three conversations that we're going to have with, like I said, different people from their perspectives. They all have addiction stories, and to hear from them what their journey is, what it was, and where they want to go with that, and just the idea of addiction, and that's the other thing too. Not even focusing on the problem, but focusing on their journeys and what they see as the solution, what they see as their journey out, and to focus on the idea of recovery, man. I mean, recovery, it's a journey, it's not a destination. Matter of fact, the journey is the destination. There's no finish line. As soon as you think you've arrived, you're set up for failure, you're set up for a relapse or slip or something like that. So the whole idea of recovery, man, I think is key and vital. It takes 2 seconds to Google, addiction in America and to find all the statistics, find out how bad we don't need to talk about how bad the problem is. We all know how bad the problem is. But to just hear some stories and hear some different perspectives, man, I'm pretty excited about that from whatever their perspectives are. Some of them, quite like everything, some of it we may can relate to, and some of them maybe we can't relate to. But either way, just to hear some different perspectives, I think it's gonna be cool.
Well, I mean, the linear thread, the commonality between all of them is they dealt with their addiction and they went through recovery. Then they decided that was their purpose, to help others through recovery. And so that's really the whole purpose of this is, to your point, wherever your focus goes, your energy goes, we don't want to focus on the problem. We're going to highlight it and go, that's it. Now we got to go towards recovery. So it's time for us to, make this a normal, common, everyday topic because, to your point, the secrecy is what makes it grow. The secrecy and the darkness and not highlighting it is what makes it grow. And I think to the point of men in America, there's so many things we hide because we've been taught to hide and suck it up and stuff it down. This is another one of those topics that we need to do the same thing with and shine a light on it and go, hey, it's time to stop stuffing. It's time to stop, thinking you're alone on an island. We're all suffering and dealing with and surviving some sort of addiction because that's just our culture right now. Our culture is an addiction culture. They're trying to get us addicted to anything and everything because then we're out of our power. We're out of our purpose. And then we wonder why we're so miserable in the U.S. or in the West because we're out of coherence with who we really are.
I love this new comment, new subby, OMG, I needed to be here right now. I promise you. Thank you for this live. We got to have these conversations. We got to be bold enough to, and this is not even self-serving, to be honest with you. We got to be bold enough to, when content comes along, share it. Have these conversations, whether it's sharing a video like this or a stream like this or whatever, but just sharing the topic, man. Just talk about, the topic with your circle. We deal with, it's like we got these skeletons in our closets in our lives. And when we don't talk about it, man, it just goes and it just grows. We got to be willing to talk about these conversations, man. We got to be willing to chime in. We got to be willing to get real, get in the mirror, but then also, recognize that, hey, man, this is how I grew up in my family. My whole family was full of addicts growing up. Not everybody, but for sure, most of the men, most of the males in my family in and out of prison and just addicted to this, addicted to that. My father was an alcoholic and drug addict. And, I remember him and other friends being passed out in the bathroom and all kinds of craziness growing up and just alcoholism and just all kinds of mess. And, that, of course, back then, a lot of things didn't get talked about. But I remember having that story, man. And I remember growing up thinking, well, at least, and I dodged that bullet. I ain't addicted to nothing until I realized, I don't know. I've had this thing kind of, ruin my life. And so, but we got to be willing to have these conversations. And so thank you for that comment.
Yes,
we love hearing that feedback, and we invite you to, again, continue to chime in and listen over these next few weeks, because we're going to bring some people in to talk about their experience.
Yeah, we want to make this so commonplace that it gets to the point where you go see your people and you're like, how's your addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Just because we're all addicted to something, and we're hoping that maybe we can make it we're addicted to good things. We become addicted to positivity and not soothing and survival. We become addicted to love and connection and community versus consumption and comparison and addiction.
Wow. You see that comment, though? Well, I mean, it's right there. This comment is, I'm an addict that keeps making excuses to stop, and I have a support system so thorough it's unreal, but I keep making excuses. That's very common.
Yeah.
That's I mean,
that's pretty much your first, like, I have to acknowledge that I'm making excuses. I have this issue, and
I mean, and that's what the journey looks like. That's what recovery. That's part of the recovery journey. That's at least the beginning steps of recovery, anyway. Is being able to talk about this stuff, being able to put it out there. And again, when you take an inventory of your life, whoever you are, when you take an inventory of your life and say, man, what has control over me that I can't really say no to, or that I just default to when I'm not thinking, when I'm not, actively whatever. What's that default that I go to?
Yeah, and it's one of those things too that we have to realize that it, like you said, it's a journey. It's not a destination. What I used to term it as when I was coaching was 12-step, 2-step. You're going to take 2 steps forward. You're going to take a step back. A lot of times that step back is the most important part because you're not failing. You're reinforcing that you want to change. You're not failing. You're reinforcing that this thing has you and that you're becoming more aware of it. So you get to a point where you can acknowledge it prior to taking over. But it's something that we, as a nation, as a country, we need to start talking about. We need to start making it okay. And we need to realize that it is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not a rip the Band-Aid off thing. Oh, I'm an addict, so now I'm done. No. It's something that you have to change those neural pathways. You got to change your day-to-day, and you need to have support to do that because, our cortisol levels are through the roof, and that's why we soothe.
Yeah. We don't want to make, we don't have to make addiction normal because it is pretty much normal in our culture, just even based off the statistic that we talked about. Making the conversation normal, normalizing the conversation is what's important. Normalizing folks being able to come out of the shadows and say, hey, this is me, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I'm going through. And sometimes I cope in not so great ways. And being able to talk about this stuff, being able to come out and get help, get support, all these other kind of things, man. Like I said, it's a lonely place when you're addicted to something because a lot of times you don't think you can talk to somebody. There's not a safe place, or you feel like there's not a safe place to go to. So being able to talk about these things, being able to open up and being able to have a safe place is key, and it's important.
Yeah, I mean, the shame and the guilt that we all feel about, I have this issue, I have this addiction, I'm struggling with this, is what keeps us silent, is what makes it perpetuate. And so making this conversation normal and normalizing and being like, hey, we're all addicted to something, let's talk about it so that we can release the shame and guilt because unfortunately, this is the West, and we are probably the top of the pyramid, the one percenters when it comes to addiction.
I remember when I was going through therapy, kind of at the beginning of my journey, and I remember talking to my guy, and I was telling him, like, man, I feel like I'm on an island. And he said, well, that would be a very populated island if that was the case, man. And just that's 49 million people in America. I mean, documented. Addicted to something.
I bet you it's double or triple that number if we got down
no
to
doubt,
it.
Man. Especially when you start getting to all the things that we could be.
Dopamine addiction, shopping, food, sugar.
TV, all that kind of stuff, man. And how many people sit on the couch eating flaming hot Cheetos and watch reality TV?
Yeah,
that's an addiction. I mean, and you can't stop. That's just the default. And how many of us are addicted to our phones? That ain't in the 49 million. It'd be 249 million if that was the case.
Yeah, I'll be like the Amish and the homeless. No, and the homeless have
they got cell phones too.
So it'd be like the Amish, and that'll be about it. But to answer her question, we need to take the anonymous out of the NA and the AA, stuff like that, because it's trying to keep that anonymity that keeps the guilt and the shame alive. Is when you can come to community and say, hey, this is me, I have this. That's him, he has this. That's her, she has this. We all have this, and we're dealing with it in our own way, and we need to deal with it in community.
Yeah.
But to your point, when you go to these meetings, you say your name and I'm this. The anonymous comes from you keep that within the community. You make that a safe place. That's the anonymity, is that this meeting is a sacred place to share in our community. So, but I think to our point tonight is that we should take the anonymity away and just realize that we're all addicted to something, and it's time to have that conversation.
Yeah, first of all, I just a personal thing for me. I have a problem saying I am
Right.
something I don't want to be. I mean, that's just a personal thing. So that's how you get down. Then cool. If you say I am whatever and I'm whatever, that's on you. But I don't even want the words coming out of my mouth as an example, because if I don't want to be that. That being said, it wasn't until I wouldn't be here doing this right now if I hadn't shared my story to just a small group that I was in at the time of guys. I mean, or just started sharing my story with people in general, because that opened up a door for one thing to another to another. And then it just got to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, man, my purpose is in my pain. And that opened up the door, many dominoes later to being here right now. And so, the idea of being able to openly share, that could be the key to your sobriety, really, just to be able to openly share with the people around you, to create a platform. There's a million people that can hear your story and say, me too. And so being able to share your story and share it openly, man, that could be not only the key for you, but that could be the key for somebody else.
I got to give that an amen.
Boom.
And until next time we bring y'all to church,
Yeah.
make sure you like and subscribe. Become part of the Mad Men Mafia. And until next week, and on the next Hot Channel, we, as Mad Men, are out.